What's your brain? Let's take a peek. A little weird, a little chic. Not just thinking it's a show, predicting life as you go. Lollydabbing through this life with Richard and Keri, brains in flight. It builds your world, it makes things new. Turns out you shape meaning too. Brains aren't born to just react. They build your world, that's a fact. No command center, no set fate, just wiring up what seems great. Lollydabbing through this life with Keri and Richard, thoughts ignite, laughs and wonder, every hue. We're here to share it all with you. So hit play and join the fun. Your brain's been working since day one. From silly to deep, it's quite a view. Lollydabbing through with you.
All the buttons, Keri. Push all the buttons. Anyway, hello, everybody. I am missing my co-host today, which is not my favorite place to be, not having somebody on the screen with me, but I do have Robbie out in the chat. Hi, Robbie. And I've been informed it's National Beaver Day today. And does that mean you're snacking if you're lollygagging through your food today, Robbie? I don't know. Anyways, I'm glad you're here. For those of you joining me later, hello in the replay and whatnot. I got a new boom mic, and right on cue, within the first few minutes, the dogs start barking. Hold that thought. Anyways, also, there's like a hotel being built across the street and some sort of subdivision. They've got the street closed down. There's a lot of background noise happening today too. So hopefully that is not too annoying or distracting. The dogs are lolly barking. But other than all of that, me and Robbie will be discussing Lesson 6, Brains Make Up More Than One Kind of Mind. The key idea in this lesson of Lisa Feldman Barrett's book is there is no single normal human mind. Our brains are wired by experience, culture, and biology to provide and produce a wide range of mental and, actual lived experiences. So there's no such thing as like one size fits all mind. There's no universal human mind versus a doggy mind. She argues that the mind is construction. It's going to be a long hour, y'all. She argues that the mind is constructed and shaped by a mix of your brain's wiring, your environment, your social and cultural influences, and your bodily experiences. Brains are similar enough to build a society together, but different enough that each person's inner world is uniquely their own, which I love and hate. I think that works both ways for us, right? It's amazing and also kind of sucks. The main kind of takeaway from this chapter is what feels intuitive, emotional, or rational to you might be totally different for somebody else and equally valid. I think we all kind of understand that first part. It's the and equally valid that I like to try to keep in mind when I'm going through my day-to-day life dealing with other humans and stuff. Yeah. Let's see. Your brain doesn't build a mind in isolation. If you go back and listen to last week's episode, we talked about how minds work together. And I might actually play a little clip, a little excerpt from that part, just as kind of a throwback because, re-listening to the chapter, she has some really great bits that I don't always include in our discussions. And sometimes it's nice just to hear it right from her. But the languages you hear, the foods you eat, the values that you're taught, the way people respond to you, brains build minds through repeated social and sensory experiences. That's why minds vary across cultures, regions, and families, not because of dysfunction, but because of diversity in input. People in the U.S. tend to express emotion verbally and externally. Well, actually, you know what I'm going to do? Hey, Chad, how's it going? I'm going to play this quick excerpt from the beginning of her lesson 6, because I think, she'll just say it all. I don't know if I'm actually allowed to do this on YouTube. We'll see. If I get taken down or yelled at, I guess I won't be doing it anymore. But today, I'm going to do it. Because, I like playing with fire. All right. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you guys can hear this.
Lesson number 6. Brains make more than one kind of mind.
You guys got that?
When people from the island of Bali in Indonesia are afraid, they fall asleep. Or at least, that's what they're supposed to do.
Can you guys hear that? Thumbs up. Okay. Velcro is fixing cars. So, I don't know if you caught that, but in Indonesia and Bali, when people are afraid, they go to sleep. Velcro is sleeping. No. Velcro is fixing cars. Anyway, here we go.
Falling asleep might seem like a strange thing to do when you're afraid. If you're from a Western culture, you're supposed to freeze on the spot, widen your eyes, and gasp. You can also squeeze your eyes shut and scream like a teenage babysitter in a bad horror movie. Or you can run away from whatever is scaring you. These behaviors are Western stereotypes for proper fear behavior. In Bali, the stereotype is to fall asleep. What kind of mind snoozes out of fear? A kind of mind that's different from yours.
Yeah, Chad, I'm glad you said something because I go to sleep when I'm excited, but I don't have any way to like anything to do with that excitement. If I have something big coming up, I'll go to sleep because I just want it to to shorten the time experience between now and the thing that I'm excited about. So Christmas, I was never somebody who couldn't sleep the day of Christmas. I'd be going to sleep at 6. If I have a trip that I'm going on, or if I have just something big and exciting, not really an anxiety thing, but something I'm looking forward to, I like to sleep. That's when I sleep. And my fear response tends to be, we talk about fight, flight, or freeze, but there's also another one that we can kind of categorize, and they call it fawn. So I talk, or I suck up, or I try to I try to kind of appease whatever it is that is scaring me. Works better with people than with angry tigers in the bushes. But anyway, I live in a society where there's people that tend to scare me as opposed to tigers. So that's how I've kind of adapted. Anyways, I thought that was just kind of an interesting thing. And for me, I hadn't thought about going to sleep when I'm scared. And but apparently in Bali or Indonesia, that is like a thing. Let's see. Where am I at my notes? Your brain isn't built in isolation, yada, yada, yada. Neither mind is wrong. So whether you're fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn, or sleep, when it comes to reacting to fear, none of it's wrong. It's just built for its environment. There's the doggy. So I think that, true crime is a huge thing right now. Sorry, I muted. I think they're done for now. But true crime is quite a popular category of, infotainment, information that's entertaining for people right now. And I know that I hear over and over and over again, that person, didn't react properly. They must be guilty, or why would you, why are they standing like that? It's very easy, as a case unfolds, to be able to validate a person's emotional reaction or invalidate their emotional reaction as you kind of see how the case unfolds or whatever. What I really like about Lisa Feldman Barrett is she is debunking the idea that all humans express emotions in the same way. A Western idea that people frown when sad or smile when happy doesn't actually hold up cross-culturally. In some cultures, people don't show distress on their face, but feel it strongly. In others, a smile might be used to mask anger. I laugh and I smile when I'm uncomfortable. So I absolutely would be that person in the interrogation room who is like inappropriately laughing. Like right now, without my co-host, inappropriately laughing because I feel slightly uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, what Lisa Feldman Barrett really wants us to keep in mind is that facial expressions are not universal indicators of internal states. When people are shocked or in grief or anything like that, shark smile before eating people. I am, yes, I do. But I'm a jolly uncomfortable. Doesn't that count for something, Chad? Facial expressions are not universal indicators of internal states. The mind doesn't simply read emotions, it predicts them based on past learning and cultural context. So how we perceive somebody's emotions is based on what, we know from the past and from our cultural context. Brains can construct wildly different realities because minds are constructed from lived experience. Two people can experience the same event in totally different way, which is why eyewitnesses are absolutely unreliable. One person might interpret a sharp tone as a threat, while another might hear it just as urgency. For me, sometimes a sharp tone means I'm excited about something. So I'll snap or I'll get loud, not because I'm yelling at somebody, but because I'm like speaking in all caps. I'm not yelling. I'm just really excited, feeling super emphatic about something. So it isn't about being sensitive to other people's moods or logical about them. It's about how your brain has learned to make sense of the world. And I think that this idea of like emotional intelligence, especially how it's used in pop culture, like I read a lot of business books, so especially in business, it's the idea of being emotionally intelligent, and then people who teach this emotional intelligence is really kind of a Machiavellian manipulation on how to nudge people's behavior by giving them the illusion that you understand them. I think I love the idea of having emotional intelligence, but I think the premise is great. The reality of it has not been so good. And there's really no such thing as common sense. So whenever anybody says, well, that's not common sense, or that's common sense that you don't do this, or you do this. And we really need to keep in mind that there is not really anything in this world such as common sense. Your brain learns how to make sense of the world based on its experience, its culture, its all these kind of things that we've been talking about in this book. And what I really love is having these conversations opens us up to the reality that we don't need to categorize people. And I'll talk about a little bit about it later, but categorizing people is for our own comfort, but it's not the reality of how we work with each other's minds. This applies to mental health and neurodiversity. Lisa Feldman Barrett suggests that there are many mental health labels, and those are attempts to describe minds that function differently, but they're not necessarily broken. She used the example that in the DSM-5, the psychiatrist's book of labels, that homosexuality or identity, like self-identity, was like a mental health issue. And of course, that's since been taken out. But we have to remember that things like the DSM-5, which is what is acknowledged currently in our society, is kind of always changing. Language is always changing. These things are guidelines, but they're meant to be flexible. Neurodivergence, like autism, ADHD, bipolar, etc., can reflect alternative forms of prediction, sensory processing, and emotional regulation. But there's nothing wrong with that. One man's shark is another man's dentures. Now, every time I giggle, you guys are going to be wondering, is she uncomfortable? Sometimes it's just a giggle because I'm laughing, but inappropriate giggling is a sign of discomfort. So yeah, neurodivergence is just a reflection of alternate forms of prediction, alternate forms of sensory processing, and alternate forms of emotional regulation. Instead of asking what's wrong with somebody, we can ask what kind of mind has this brain learned to make? Okay, so why does this matter? Why does it matter that we have all these different types of minds? Why does it matter that we really try to not embrace categories, but just embrace nuance and variation instead of like trying to create conformity? Normal is a moving target. Social conflict, misunderstanding, and even injustice can come from assuming that there's one correct way to experience life. Understanding diversity of minds makes us more compassionate, more flexible, and more curious, and less likely to pathologize. There we go. Always sounds different in my head than it comes out of my mouth. Pathologize differences. So I am breaking this down a little bit more. In this chapter, she talks about meatloaf brain versus pocket knife brain versus what she is conceptualizing or would like us to kind of conceptualize as our brains. So meatloaf brain is kind of a mushy myth. What is it? In previous chapters, she discusses the idea that the brain is just a blob of stuff, gray, squishy lump that passively receives the world and then reacts to it. This implies that our brains is mostly the same throughout and undifferentiated and maybe not doing anything all that complex. Just, food, water, receive information, react to information. The problems with that is it makes it just sound like the brain just sits there until something happens to it. It doesn't really discuss the structure or the function, and it ignores how active and energy hungry the brain is and how it builds your reality moment by moment. Lisa Feldman Barrett says, no, your brain is not a passive sponge. It's active, it's predictive, like we've been saying over these last few weeks, and it is shaping your experience while reacting to your past experience all at the same time. The other idea is the pocket knife brain, which is kind of like the triune brain that we had discussed in the half chapter at the beginning of this series. It's saying that your brain is like a Swiss Army knife with specialized parts, each doing a distinct job. One part is for handling fear, one part is for handling logic, one part is for handling vision, one part is for handling emotions, things of that nature. The reptile brain versus the emotional brain versus the rational brain. The problems with that sort of envisioning of how our brains work is that it oversimplifies it. It encourages this emotion versus reason, and that is a fight inside of your head, and that is not the reality. It suggests that damage to one part equals permanent loss of a function. It doesn't explain how flexible and adaptive and distributed the brain's functions really are. Brains are not like tools in a box. They team up, they share duties, and often doing different jobs depending on context. Remember that your brain is a dynamic network that predicts, adapts, and reroutes like a living, humming sort of infrastructure. So what Lisa Feldman Barrett suggests is that we have a brain that is predictive, energy budgeting, and social. Your brain is an energy budgeting, prediction generating network. Its main job isn't to think, it is to regulate your body and keep you alive with the least energy possible. It does this by predicting your needs, your physical, emotional, and social needs before they happen. It builds your mind based on experience, culture, language, and social interaction. So we talked about allostasis previously, where your brain keeps your body systems running smoothly ahead of time. Prediction, you don't just see or feel, you predict what you're going to see or feel and then check to see if you're right. Neuroplasticity, where your brain rewires itself based on what you need it for, right? Can you guys hear the squeaky? The dogs are great for breaking my train of thought. Good thing I have notes. Co-regulation, other people's brains help manage our brains and vice versa. We help manage other people's brains. And by manage, I mean the allostasis, the energy that they use. And that there's no such thing as a universal mind. Brains make lots of different kinds of minds, and that is normal. Lisa Feldman Barrett wants us to embrace the messy, flexible, social, adaptive brain and think of symphony or city infrastructure or even airport system to keep everything is moving, connected, and anticipating needs and things of that nature. Things are always dynamic. So part of the reason why we have these labels that we like to use to try and explain other people's minds is for comfort. And it kind of kicks back to this idea that we are creating these labels because by labeling people, we are actually conserving energy of like how much energy our brain burns, right? So if we can comfortably box people into types, she's an introvert, he's a type A, I'm a Gemini, ENFP, whatever. It gives us all this kind of sense of control and belonging, like we've solved the puzzle of who we are or who somebody else is, and it makes it so that we don't have to we don't have to use energy unduly to try and figure people out. It gives us these shortcuts. If I know your label, I know how to treat you. Or if I know my label, I can ask to be treated a certain way. It explains away behaviors that people, she's just emotional. That's her sign. It helps us kind of feel safe and seen in our own identity because we can put it out there in very clear and articulate manner. But our minds don't actually fit into boxes. Our brains don't produce fixed personalities. There's also another really good book that I'd like to go over in this show, and that is Personality Isn't Permanent. It's by Benjamin Hardy. Maybe Benjamin Harding. Don't quote me on that. We'll get there when we get there. But personalities are not permanent. They predict and adapt based on situations. No one is a consistent self operating 24/7. The person you are at a party, a person that you are at work, a person with your grandma might feel different, not because you're fake, but because your brain is constantly constructing and a context-specific mind. She refers to it as acculturation, which I love that word. And I think that, I'll go into that later. But I have some thoughts on ways that we can use the term acculturation that we're not currently using in some instances that could actually be really helpful to people. So let's see. You don't have one true self. You have many variations. And I think Richard and I talked about this last week when we were talking about like our work self, our home self. Was that last week? Maybe it's the week before. They're starting to all run together. But we might be outgoing at karaoke, but withdrawn at networking events, and then laser focused at work. Labels would call this inconsistent. If I'm really outgoing at karaoke, but shy at business networking, and then I'm able to be really focused at work, we would see that person as, slightly inconsistent. But Barrett would call it adaptive. And let's face it, I'm not always laser focused at work. So maybe I'm more consistent than I think I am. But brains predict behavior based on experience and not personality settings. What we call traits are often just patterns of prediction. If your brain has learned that speaking up often leads to rejection, then it predicts that silence is the safest choice. If you are praised for being organized, then your brain predicts reward when you're detail-oriented. Or conversely, if you're criticized for being disorganized, then I call myself creative. And a lot of times we put ourselves into these boxes like, I'm disorganized, so I can't XYZ. I used to always tell my dad, I can't be an entrepreneur because I'm not organized enough. And I don't see that's true anymore. There's lots of other reasons why I haven't nailed it as owning my own business or being entrepreneurial. These habits can look like personality, but they're actually contextual survival strategies. Let me say that again. These habits can look like personality traits, but they're actually contextual survival strategies. So I want you to think for a minute about things that you do kind of habitually, whether they're good habits or bad habits, and ask yourself, is this my personality, or is this something that I've kind of adopted in order to survive for one reason or another? And that sure makes habit changing a totally different game, doesn't it? When you're trying to build quote unquote good habits, which I don't like to use good or bad, useful. We'll use useful or not useful. When you're trying to either get rid of unuseful habits or create new useful habits for yourself, if you take the idea that this habit is a personality thing, what would it mean to reframe it into creating a new survival strategy as opposed to trying to get rid of a bad habit? something interesting to think about. I know that I'll be applying that. Like, um, can I start something new because it's a useful, I need a new useful survival strategy. The old one is out. It's not as useful anymore. The new one, I want to come in. It kind of helps not beat myself up, I think. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. There is a cultural influence on personality. Even our idea of personality is culturally shaped. In Western cultures, we prize this idea of being a stable, individual identity. Be yourself, be independent. In other cultures, blending with your environment and blending roles is seen as maturity and emotionally intelligent. There's no universal way to be a person. What we call personality is just kind of our cultural story that we've learned to tell ourselves. So we have these contextual survival stories, we have these cultural stories, and we kind of lump them all together and call them my personality is, or your personality is XYZ. So really, I like to, the statement, be the change you want to see in this world. For me, all of this matters because I want to be the change that stops reducing people into labels and starts observing and starts experimenting with myself and observing other people and observing my experiments and observing other people as they move through this world with these sort of questions in my mind. Like, is this a cultural story that they have? Is this a survival context that is creating this person's way of being? Am I oversimplifying this person? Am I allowing this person to change? Am I allowing myself to change? Am I allowing myself to grow? There is a lot of times when changing your mind is considered fickle or considered wishy-washy or flip-floppy, whatever it is. And I think that once we start realizing that everybody's mind is supposed to be fluid and situation dependent, and there are all sorts of causes of emotional and behavioral patterns, we could be less judgmental and more attuned to context and more accepting of change. Oh, well, Robbie, I didn't know that. Thanks for the news. I get my news from you, Robbie, in the chat. I really don't keep up with current events very well, so I'm glad that you're here. At the end of the day, boxes are really comforting, but minds are not puzzles to be solved. They're ecosystems, and they're in motion. And according to Lisa Feldman Barrett, who you are is constructed moment by moment, shaped by your predictions, influenced by your history, molded by your culture, changed by the people around you. The more we let go of rigid labels, the more room we make for actual understanding, connection, and transformation. And this is the moment where I shed a tear because Falcrow's not here. So maybe I'll play another little clip of this. I want to play a lot of this chapter, but I'm hesitant to play too much because I don't want to step on her copyright. I want to play just enough to kind of entice you to go and listen to the audiobook or go get the book yourself and really listen to how she breaks things down. I'm going to see if I can find this bookmark about affect. Let's see here, lesson 6. All right, let's go here. I think this is it. No, it didn't find it for me. All right, well, here we go. We're going to experiment.
Summary as affect.
Oh, look at me.
You're barely aware of it.
I found it.
Especially if your culture values the individual over the group. But people who care about neither themselves nor anyone else will have a hard time functioning in any human culture. An especially useful feature of the mind, and one of the closest things we have to a universal mental feature, is mood, the general sense of feeling that comes from your body. Scientists call it affect. Feelings of affect range from pleasant to unpleasant, and from idle to activated. Affect is not emotion. Your brain produces affect all the time, whether you're emotional or not, and whether you notice it or not. Affect is the source of all your joys and sorrows. It makes some things profound or sacred to you, and other things trivial or vile. If you're a religious person, affect helps you feel connected to God. If you're a spiritual person, but not necessarily religious, affect becomes the transcendent feeling of being part of something larger than yourself. If you're a skeptic, affect is what drives your certainty that others are wrong. Where does affect come from? In every moment, like right now, as you listen to these words, your hormones, organs, and immune system are producing a storm of sense data, and you're barely aware of it. You notice your heartbeat and breathing only when they're intense, or you focus on them. You almost never notice your body temperature unless it's too high or too low. Your brain, however, makes meaning from this data storm continuously to predict your body's next action and meet its metabolic needs before they arise. In the midst of all this activity inside you, something miraculous happens. Your brain summarizes what's going on with your body in the moment, and you feel that summary as affect. Affect is like a barometer of how you're doing. Remember, your brain is constantly running a budget for your body. Affect hints at whether your body budget is in balance or in the red. Ideally, evolution would have given you something more specific, like an app or a smartwatch, to regulate your body budget precisely. Beep, you would hear, "You're running low on glucose. Have an apple, or even better, a piece of chocolate. And, by the way, you didn't sleep enough last night, so you're running low on a brain chemical called dopamine. Drink 8 ounces of coffee, preferably dark roast with a little bit of cream, to borrow energy from tomorrow to get through the rest of today." Unfortunately, affect is not so precise. It just tells you, beep, you feel like crap. And then your brain must predict what to do next to keep you alive and well. Scientists are still puzzling out how your brain's body budgeting activities, which are physical, become transformed into affect, which is mental. Hundreds of studies from laboratories around the world, including mine, observe that it happens, yet this transformation from physical signals to mental feelings remains one of the great mysteries of consciousness.
I'm muted. So, I think why this distinction, brains are scrambled, not fried. Yeah, this is your brain. This is your brain scrambled. Why this distinction matters. I think she's saying, like, don't trust your emotions at face value. And I personally like to make a distinction between how I'm feeling and what emotion I'm experiencing. It really kind of helps me tune in to what's going on in my body and then the story that my brain is telling about it. If you treat affect like emotion, you can end up mislabeling what's happening. If you feel jittery, you can assume you're angry, but you could just be excited or over-caffeinated, right? If you feel drained, maybe you assume I'm depressed, but you could be dehydrated. These are all things to kind of consider. Emotions can reinforce themselves once labeled. So mislabeling ourselves really has consequences. And that's not to say that things like depression aren't real, but if you can solve feeling, low with water, why would you not? At least give it a try. That's why I said I'm personally practicing with experimenting with myself and then allowing my mind to be changed. And even if I kind of automatically label or categorize somebody, I really allow that label or category to be as fluid as I possibly can, even if it means that I'm feeling uncomfortable. Listen, they just don't understand the on-air signal that I'm putting up here. So emotions, so I think it's really, hold that thought. Thank you for being patient, everybody. Usually Richard fills in with, banter here, but. Anyway, okay. I think what's really empowering about thinking about our emotions and other people's emotions and behaviors is if emotions are constructed and not hardwired, we can learn to build new ones. We can learn to be comfortable with social settings when we previously weren't. We can learn how to, things that have made us feel ashamed in the past. We can overcome that. Things that made us anxious before, like I said, can make us feel excited instead. I tell myself a story that I'm disorganized, but maybe I can just say I'm organized differently. Or what is disorganized over here in my personal life, maybe I'm not disorganized at work, and that's fine. I can be both and that doesn't mean that I have to change, like that there's something wrong with me. I'm just acculturating to these different sort of environments. If we have emotional granularity, so have a more precise vocabulary for our feelings, we can actually have more control or nuances to how we experience the world and also how we communicate how we're feeling to the world. I think that, again, to me, that feels really empowering. Let's just do an example. So if we look at like our physical state, say I skipped lunch, I have low blood sugar, my muscles feel tight, and my brain notices that and says, this feels unpleasant and activated. And I have, I end up snapping at a coworker because I'm feeling irritated. But maybe I'm just hungry or hangry. My brain predicted irritation, not low blood sugar, and built the affect into the wrong emotional story. So our emotions, which is really hard because I grew up in the 90s and I was told to use I feel statements. And the fact of the matter is, I feel is not a raw objective truth. They're constructed guesses that our brains make based on affect, physical state, and context. And when I can tell the difference between what's happening in my body, how it feels, and what I think it means, I get better at responding as opposed to reacting, because that is all the control that we have in our varying circumstances. We can't control circumstances, right? But we can respond differently. We can choose to respond as opposed to react. And we can question the stories that we tell ourselves. Anyway. Yeah, before that it was shut up, bitch. Like, you're not allowed to talk about how you feel. Right. And then 90s it was I feel statements all over the place, like, I feel like you don't love me if you don't take out the trash. Again, like, whether or not a person's taking out the trash literally has no it has no significance in whether or not they love you. And my feelings about it's that's just a story that I'm building. So if we could acknowledge that I feel statements are I think statements, or the story I'm telling myself statements. Yeah, shut your yapper. I'll give you something to cry about. Right. I mean, I think the good news is we're evolving as a society, and we're learning how to kind of handle these things differently. And I think that we are kind of in a state where we spend a lot of time like analyzing our emotions. And maybe we can shortcut some things by just asking ourselves like basic physical questions. And then understanding that our emotions and your emotion, my emotions, your emotion, they can all be evolving and changing. And they have all these external kind of contributions, as well as the story we tell ourselves, as well as survival and cultural things. I mean, there's so many nuances to it, and it's exhausting. But it should be. It's supposed to be exhausting. And I like to tell my brain, listen, it's all right if I use some extra calories on allowing nuances to exist, because I can eat a cookie. I'm lucky. I live in a cultural society as a Westerner where I can feed myself more food in order to be able to process more nuance. And so we're coming up on 47 minutes, and my dogs are refusing to quit barking. So I think I'm going to wrap this up just a tiny bit early, unless you guys have anything. Oh, Jessica. Thank you for coming. I remember that when you were like, what does that even mean, nuances? I love you. Thank you for popping into the chat, Jess. I appreciate you being here. So yes, nuance is a good thing. Aw. Love you, friend. All right, what was I talking about? Nuances. Yes. And I was distracted by the fact that Jess was here. I just want to smile now. Hi. Hi, Jess. Do you want to come up on the panel? I'll send you the link. You can be my temporary co-host for the next 15 minutes. Anyways, yeah. So let's see. What are the key takeaways? Was that really a sure? Don't threaten me with a good time. I am sending you this link. Look in your Chime email. Anyway, flexibility, nuance, and allowing people to evolve, I think, is really important. See how good I am at. I'm not going to be good at this at all. Hold that thought, everybody. I'm sending an email. All right, there, it's sent. All right, so I sent you the email to your Chime one. while we wait for Jess, special pop-in guest co-host for the next few minutes. Yay! I'm so excited. I'm so derailed right now. So derailed. Okay, so people. Everybody has a different sort. I've got to go back up to my notes because, see, this is why we have notes, so that when we get derailed. What did we talk about today? We'll do that while we wait for Jess. We talked about lesson 6, which is brains make more than one kind of mind. We talked about how we can't judge people by what we think is what we interpret as a physical emotion, like on the external part of their body. People who smile or giggle when they're uncomfortable might just be a survival tactic. What else did we talk about? We talked about the different types of brains that we've kind of assumed we've had throughout society, which is our brain just kind of sits there until something happens to it, and then it does things when it needs it. It's not a passive sponge. It's a predictive system shaping that shapes our experience every second of every day. It's not a pocket knife brain. It doesn't have like specialized parts. Everything kind of works together in ways that we still don't really understand. We tend to categorize people in order to save energy and to give us like this comfort level. Oh, and here she is. Okay,
What's up?
Hi, it's Jess. Okay, so those of you out there who have came to this channel or this show before don't know Jess, but Jess is my very bestie friend. And she is a literally, all right. So even though I was just talking about not categorizing people, I am going to put
people.
I know you do. So I'm going to categorize you as a firecracker. And then also, over the years, you're like a shot out of a cannon. Like just how direct you are. But the Jess that I know is a shot out of a cannon, but also she is a very sensitive and aware person.
I'm very sensitive, actually.
And
but I always shoot before I think.
Yes, she is. You are a shoot first, ask questions later, but you do allow people to change your mind. And so even though you move at 1,000 miles an hour and you're hard to catch, you are so self-aware. It's one of the reasons why I love you. Yes, you really are. You are very aware when you're shooting. You're like, I'm doing it because I want to.
This is true, but a lot of times it's conviction, because once you have a conviction about something, then moving is not difficult.
Right.
So it's that moment where I'm like, hey, this is wrong or this is right. Then you just go after it, whichever direction it is, whether it's helping someone or holding someone accountable. Doesn't matter.
Right.
It's that moment of conviction. And that's when I tell people all the time that whenever you have fear, I feel like it's because you lack conviction. You're not convicted to move in one direction or the other.
Maybe it's not fear so much as indecision. You really despise indecision.
I do. I don't. Well, it's hard for me to, when it comes to major things. My issue is small things. I can't decide what I want to eat.
Because it's not important. You're like, I got other things to do. I just put something in my mouth. Yeah. Moving on. But here's been my experience with you. You could be 100% convicted of of something. Pick anything, right? And if I bring things to light that you hadn't thought of, you will very easily stop and change your direction. You're still going 100 miles an hour. You're still taking action on things, which is something that I think like we can all learn from, but you still allow your mind to be changed, and you
If
allow
it
your
makes sense.
convictions to pivot.
Sorry, I'm gonna turn
You
it up.
pivot. You pivot very easily.
If it makes sense, for sure. And I think that some of that came off of the tale of in 2019 when I had my spiritual awakening and realizing that being stuck in this indoctrination, because I was raised Church of Christ, and women don't teach unless it's in the nursery. And this whole thing that I had been taught my entire life, women don't lead in church, women don't do this, women don't do that. And once I had this spiritual awakening, and I was like, that is not God at all. For one, and for two, I'm not going to live in this indoctrination anymore. But once I came,
which is a huge pivot. That's a huge pivot to go from.
Well, it took a long time. It took,
yeah.
I was 32 years old, or was I 32? I was 30. But when I went through that transformation, it was a lot easier for me to not be stuck in my own ways and in what I would consider to be my own indoctrination. I had indoctrinated myself on a lot of things.
As we do. Our brain creates shortcuts based on our social and emotional experiences. And it's going to predict certain outcomes. Your brain was predicting that you would be safer if you were quiet and you followed your norms and the known rules of your environment. And once you had that moment where you kind of asked yourself, what if, and then you started to see these different realities around you, all of a sudden, what you were seeing was completely different, which actually brings us to, I'm going to segue to our next chapter for next week. So hold that thought. Chapter.
I can't.
I know. But the next week's chapter is our brain creates our reality. And I think that is a perfect example of how our brains create a reality, because the reality that you lived in prior to your sort of awakening, to your perspective change, to your new perception of the world around you, your entire reality changed, did it not?
Of course. Yeah, my entire reality changed, but going into that safety versus conviction zone, I was a lot safer back when I was indoctrinated. I didn't have all of the the family quirks, which I know that a lot of your listeners are probably not going to understand this, but
they're not.
But,
that's a whole other conversation for a whole other show that we will be doing.
Exactly. But when I was living in that indoctrination, technically I was a lot safer. I could have still been there and probably been a lot more safe with me and my children, and then just fighting within the four walls of an abusive relationship, as opposed to fighting within an entire judicial system of furthering of the abuse and the narcissism, and and now you have no four walls. Now it doesn't even stop. But so technically, yes, I was safer when I was living in that indoctrination, but I had conviction. And then at that point, I was like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. This is insane. And even back in 2019, I started implementing into my Bible studies, because I was leading women every single Monday. We would meet, and I was starting to open their neurological pathways into some of the what I would consider to be not so traditional teaching, and they got it. And the reason why they got it was because it made more sense than the literal scripture that they had been taught, that women are just to take care of the children, wipe butts, sit, listen, and follow the men.
Robbie says, yes, you're like a bat out of hell.
Well,
in the best way.
I'm sure.
Robbie.
That's a major change. But anyway, Keri, you're awesome. I love what you're doing. I'm sorry that I can't be here every time and listen to you live, because I love the interaction. Yeah. But I know you're rocking it.
I'm glad you showed up. It's funny, thought manifest reality, because I was thinking about you today, and then there you were, and then here you are. And I love, so another thing that I love about you is, she just comes right out of the gate talking about religion and talking about judicial stuff. Don't apologize. Don't apologize. Don't ever change.
This mindset. When I hopped on, you're talking about your mindset, and
yeah.
and
Absolutely.
genes and all this stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was a huge part of your evolution as a human and a big part of allowing your mind to be changed. And now you're on this mission to change people's minds about other systems that we have in place that we've taken for granted for a really long time. And I love that you don't tiptoe around things and that you come right out and say things. What you're thinking in that moment. And it is one of the things that I absolutely love about you. And why you're in my life, because like you are like and I love that. And even though like we tiptoe around things like that in general, like I love that you're here to shake things up.
I like to shake things up.
You do. And you remind me of the importance of being direct. And so thank you for that.
Of being what?
Of being direct.
Oh, direct.
Being direct and not pussyfooting around, right? Yes, Robbie, I mentioned meatloaf, but that was a little ways back. We were talking about meatloaf brains.
That's so funny.
Like zombies, what they like to eat.
Right.
Anyways, everybody, this is Jess. Hopefully we're going to be able to start something here soon. And it's going to be powerful. It's going to be opinionated, and it's going to be informative, and it's probably going to be totally different than what Richard and I do, but that's okay, because you know what? I am a nuanced person who has many different sides of me.
Yes, you are.
And I have people in my life for all of these different sides of me, and I'm so very grateful for that. Hopefully I'll see everybody back here next week for our Brains Create Our Own Realities. Maybe Jess will be back. Maybe she won't. But look for Jess in the future, because she will be around and on my channel. You have like a TikTok thing that you're doing. Do you want to throw like
I do. Yeah, you can look if you're on TikTok, look up Justice Without Limits.
Is it just like at Justice Without Limits?
Well, it's justicewithoutlimits.org. I'm still working on that website, but my other handle is Ladies of Justice.
Can you on your device? On your device, can you put in the private chat so I can copy and paste those handles? Oh, she's gone. I do that all the time when I'm trying to. I'll do it on my phone. It's the hardest thing. Anyway, we'll wait for her to come back. She'll figure it out. But yeah, she's doing a lot of things with family court. She is a powerful woman, and I will stick those. I will stick her. There she is.
Sorry.
That's okay. I do it all the time when I'm on the phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can give them to me in an email, and I'll stick them in the description after I post, so you guys can find Jess, see what she's all about, see what she's working on, because she's always I don't know, shaking trees. Or there's an expression. There's something. I don't know. Seeing what falls out. I don't know.
I mean, Keri, do your followers know that you're a badass too?
I mean, I don't know.
Well, if they don't, they should. because we should have I'm not gonna butt in, but we should do something on some of the stuff that you've done. And you're always so reserved, you're always so humble about all the things that you've done. Your intellect is out of this world. And I think that your listeners should know that you did win a federal, well, I don't know if it's National Labor Relations Board's federal, right?
Yeah, it's national anyways.
You did win. It's national.
It's national.
You did win that. You won that.
I'm just glad other people. I mean, I'm glad other people got money out of it.
Docs. And that's this girl. And she always comes out so humble and soft and kind, and she is. But she also has another side.
I don't know if everybody in the audience who would watch this would think that I'm soft, but
maybe not.
Maybe not.
But maybe so. Maybe there are some.
Maybe.
I mean, right, you look so perfect on the other side of the screen. So sweet.
Yeah, it's so easy though with just this much. Though I did clean my desk behind the computer, which is very comforting to me, which is something that has been like a pigsty for, I don't know, like a year now. So yay for moving forward. Anyways, Jess, you stay where you are. Everybody else, we will see you next week. We're going to play this outro song, and you are going to stay right there. I'm going to talk to you here in a minute.
All right, cool.
The night says hello with the soft glow. We took a ride
Just so you know, you're not muted, so if you say anything right now, they will hear you.
And secrets low. Time to linger, but we gotta go. Voices faded with the moon's call. Laughter echoed down the hall. Thoughts that flew like paper dolls. Wrap it up and let it fall. Turn the volume down low, my friends. This chatter's come to an end. Till we gather again and again. Let these moments extend. Quiet, hear the clock tick-tock. Words won't stop, but we'll walk the walk. Dream a little till the next talk. Out of time, let's unlock. Turn the volume down low, my friends. This chatter's come to an end. Till we gather again and again. Let these moments extend. In the quiet, hear the clock tick-tock. Words won't stop, but we'll walk the walk. Dream a little till the next talk. Out of time, let's unlock. Turn the volume down low, my friends. This chatter's come to an end. Till we gather again and again. Let these moments extend. With open minds, now we drift on the book of fine. Page by page until we bind. Sweet goodbyes, let's unwind.